Hello, this is Mrs. Richardson. Welcome back for part 4 of our SOL release test questions. During the American Revolution, which side would Patrick Henry most likely have held? The important information here is that this took place during the American Revolution. And so you need to stop and ask yourself, what was the important event that was taking place during the American Revolution? And therefore, you know that the answer would be fight the British. The American Revolution was when the American colonists fought for independence from Great Britain. And so Patrick Henry would have felt that it was important to fight the British. Which number best shows James Madison's role in history? We know that James Madison felt that it was very important that we have a United States Constitution or a written plan of government. James Madison kept very detailed notes during the Constitutional Convention, as well as he was known as a great compromiser. He was the one that would help the delegates get together and compromise and reach agreement on the plans they thought were important to be included in the Constitution. So therefore, we know that the answer to this question is James Madison number 3. Gentlemen, can we compromise? Here we have a cause and effect question. The cause is Virginia disagrees with the North. And the effect is Virginia does something. Which effect best replaces the question mark? Once again, we have to look at that Virginia disagreed with the North. The North automatically is a keyword that tells you that this takes place before or during the Civil War. The Civil War is when the states disagreed with each other over slavery. And so because Virginia disagreed with the North, which believed that states should be free states, and they also disagreed with slavery, we know that this would be the answer. Votes to leave the Union. Virginia and several other southern states voted to leave or secede from the Union, and they formed the Confederate States of America. During most of the Civil War, the capital of the Confederacy was. Once again, we're talking about the Civil War, and during the Civil War, we had the Confederate States of America, which were the southern states that had seceded from the Union, and the United States of America. When the southern states seceded, they formed their own name, Confederate States of America. They voted for their own president, who was Jefferson Davis, and they also chose their own capital. And as we know, that capital was Richmond, Virginia. Here we see Woodrow Wilson. And the question is, the man shown in this picture established what? This is the man that we refer to as the Triple W. He was a president of the United States who had a plan for world peace. Therefore, we call him Woodrow Wilson World Peace, or Triple W, which tells us that the answer to this question is a plan for world peace. Which event occurred at Appomattox Courthouse? Appomattox Courthouse is the important information here. This is our key word. We know the special event that took place at Appomattox Courthouse because this was the last battle or event that happened during the Civil War. And so therefore, we know that the answer to this question is Robert E. Lee surrenders. This is where Robert E. Lee, the main general of the Confederate States of America, this is where he surrendered his army to Ulysses S. Grant, the general of the United States Army. He surrendered here, basically bringing an end to the Civil War. Oliver W. Hill is best known for his work with. We have a saying, Oliver the lawyer. Oliver the lawyer. And so therefore, when we look at these answer choices, we know that there are two possibilities. We could be the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case or the Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court case, because Oliver W. Hill was a lawyer, so therefore he would be involved in these court cases. We know that the actual answer was when the Supreme Court decided that segregated schools were unconstitutional, and the name of that court case was the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case. We have a map of North America, and we have an X that marks Jamestown. The question is, which ocean is closest to the Jamestown settlement? We know that this is Jamestown here, and so we have to look over here to the ocean, and we know that this is the Atlantic Ocean. Jamestown was chosen as a place to settle because of its what? We know that Jamestown was chosen because when they opened the locked box, it gave them instructions that the settlers were to go inland to find their place to settle, and that they were to look for specific characteristics. They were to look for a place that had water that was deep enough for ships to dock. They also needed a place that could be easily defended from attack by sea, because they were worried that the Spanish would attack them. They also had to look for a place that had a good supply of fresh water. And so when they looked for these things, they felt like that Jamestown was the perfect location. They later found out that it wasn't. However, we now know that the reason that it was chosen was because of its location. Unfortunately, the fresh water that they thought they had ended up being brackish because of it having the fresh water and the salt water mixing. Which geographic region of Virginia has many rolling hills and waterfalls? Let's make our saying once again. Coastal Plain, Piedmont, Blue Ridge Mountains, Valley and Ridge, Appalachian Plateau. And we know the region that has rolling hills and waterfalls is the Piedmont region. 1 mountains, 2 plains, 3 deserts, 4 forests. Which type of environment covered most of the land in colonial Virginia? Boys and girls, this did not only take place in colonial Virginia. Even today, we know that over 50% of our land is covered by 4, which was forests. Forest is what our land is covered by. Old rounded landforms, part of the Appalachian system, source of many rivers. Which region of Virginia is the best title for this list? And we know the answer is Blue Ridge Mountains. The source of many rivers, because we know that our rivers start up high and flow downhill into the Chesapeake Bay. And also the Blue Ridge Mountains has old rounded mountains. The major American Indian language group of southwestern Virginia was Iroquois and Cherokee, Southwest Virginia and North Carolina too. Woo! So our answer is Iroquoian. Here are the regions of Virginia: Coastal Plain, Piedmont, Blue Ridge Mountains, Valley and Ridge, Appalachian Plateau. Our question says, Robert and his family are going on a vacation to explore the regions of Virginia. They will start in Norfolk and travel west. Which region of Virginia will Robert's family visit last? Coastal Plain, Piedmont, Blue Ridge Mountains, Valley and Ridge, Appalachian Plateau. So therefore, we know the answer is Appalachian Plateau. What was one reason the Virginia capital was moved from Williamsburg to Richmond? Moving, 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 capitals once again, from Jamestown to Williamsburg and then to Richmond. Moving, 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 capitals once again, from Jamestown to Williamsburg and finally Richmond. Why were they moved from Williamsburg to Richmond? Well, let's look at these answer choices. Richmond had cleaner drinking water? No, that would have been why they moved from Jamestown to Williamsburg. Richmond was closer to the coastline? Oh no, Richmond was much further inland. Richmond was a more central location? They definitely felt like at this time that Richmond was more central from where they were located. Now we know that today, living in Southwest Virginia, that Richmond is no longer central to the whole state of Virginia. But at the time they moved it, it was more centrally located. And then finally, Richmond had a much smaller population. No, Richmond didn't have a smaller population. It had a larger population. So we know the only answer that works for this question is Richmond was a more central location. The final question for this set is, most Virginians who moved west first traveled. Well, if we look at our map of Virginia, most of the settlers started here and moved into the Piedmont region. So the coastal plain in Piedmont is where most people actually began living at the beginning. This question, though, is as they moved from the coastal plain and Piedmont region and decided to move further west, they had to cross this first group of mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains. And we know that the Blue Ridge Mountains are part of the Appalachian Mountains. So therefore, the answer to our question is across the Appalachian Mountains. Thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and I hope it helps you as you prepare for upcoming tests. Have a nice day.